So, good morning. Welcome to Banana Company. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you yourself?
Good. Excellent. So, tell me about yourself.
I'm currently a junior at the University of Texas at Austin, and I'm
Mm,
studying electrical and computer engineering with a focus on software engineering, and I'm also doing academic enrichment to focus
mm.
on data science.
Ooh, interesting. So, in your academic enrichment, so what particularly interests you about um, data science?
Over the summer, I had an opportunity to work with data at HP.
Uh-huh.
So I developed an application that enabled the developers to pinpoint where observations had occurred. And those observations would occur during the automated testing,
Mhm.
and the automated test would produce a 2,000 line data sheet. So my application would parse through that data and grab all the important information so it was human readable rather than
Mhm.
just machine readable, and being able to customize that data and pull what was necessary and to get uh, relevant information made that feel very interesting to me.
Mhm. So, is that something that you wanted to go into when you started engineering?
Actually, no. When I first started, I wanted to just focus on software and perhaps more towards the firmware side.
Uh-huh.
I don't want it to be like very low level on the electrical engineering side. So I really enjoyed embedded systems,
Mhm.
but this experience has led me to see other options. I didn't even know that this field even existed prior to when I first came into UT.
So, what makes you um, So why did you choose this field in the first place? Did you have like anything else that you really wanted to do?
Actually, it's an interesting story. My first degree is in biology.
Uh-huh.
I'm not a traditional student, so I have experience in the workforce. So my initial career path was a research coordinator,
Mhm.
and during that time as a research coordinator, this was in the medical field. I was a research coordinator at an oncology clinic. We were testing and trying to get the FDA approval
Mhm.
for neuroendocrine cancer treatment drugs.
Mhm.
And I came to the realization that it wasn't quite the field for me, mostly because a lot of the applications that I was using, I was more interested in the problem solving side
Mhm.
as well as not just the problem solving side, but I wanted to know how that software was actually being able to pull the information that was necessary, and also I felt like I could make a better interface.
Mhm.
I thought I could make a better application
Uh-huh.
to deal with the data that we were putting in and controlling our workflow.
Mhm. So when you were thinking about making that jump between the medical field and electrical engineering, clearly you had a lot of professional sort of motivation in terms of um, sort of um, going and fixing a real world problem that you're encountering. But in terms of the academic side, what were you concerned about the academics? Were you particularly um, excited about all the things that you were going to go into ECE about? All the sort of the circuits and the other stuff that sort of comes along with the ECE degree.
Yeah, I was actually really concerned because initially, whenever I was thinking about starting to go back to school,
Uh-huh.
it was daunting because I've been so far removed
Right.
from the school life,
Uh-huh.
the academic life, and I remember struggling my freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
I remember struggling my freshman year in my intro to circuits class. In my intro to intro to circuits was eye opening. It taught me how to learn and study and time management, because typically in the workforce what happens is you go to work, you clock in, you clock out, you go home. There's nothing really to time management testing in that
Mm-hmm.
in that aspect. but that was a big concern for me. And being exposed to the EE side next to the CE side, even though I was really grateful for the opportunity to learn that side, but it was hard for me to adjust and think that way. So, yeah.
So, looking back on your experience, how would you, what advice would you give to sort of people in your shoes who are maybe a little less farther along in the process than you are?
Develop a network of people that you can go to for help. There are going to be, have a study group, not just your friends. Just not just your friends, because yes, you're going to have a strong desire to socialize while you study, but if you have a study group that's outside your circle, people are bound to have talents in areas that you're not talented in, and you're going to have talents in areas that they're not talented in. So it's sort of like a communal bring together, like communal potluck. You know, you bring certain things to the table, and they bring certain things to the table, and it teaches you to work as a team, and it also teaches you to share your ideas. So if you're struggling, reach out, go to office hours, go to your TAs, go to your study, do everything that you can. Don't just, because it's easy to be struggling and have imposter syndrome and saying, what am I doing here? Everybody seems to be doing well. That's not the case. Everybody struggles at one point in time. So my advice is branch out. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and that's how I would approach that.
Yeah. So you mentioned a lot about how you had to find other people who work well with you in those environments, right? So you had to find people who you would study with, people who you would associate with on a pretty regular basis. So what do you look for when you go look for people to join a study group with?
I was actually fortunate enough to be part of the TRIG, and that's a transfer interest group when I first started UT, and it was interesting because that TRIG we were all a bit on the older side. We were ranging from the ages of like 25 to, I think the oldest student there was almost 40. So whenever I approached, I knew certain people wanted to do a certain tech core, because whenever we introduced ourselves, we talked about the tech core that we wanted to focus on, and a lot of these students had previous experience. So whenever I look for a study group, or I'm trying to approach someone for a study group, what I look for is, do they have an interest, or are they passionate about a certain field? Do they have insight that I don't have? That's something I look for, definitely.
So, how do you contribute in these groups as a teammate?
I'm usually the one that's very organized. I'll be the one that coordinates the time. I'll be the one that usually takes meeting notes, or I'm a very good facilitator. That's I've always been on that side where I've been able to bring people together and coordinate things and plan things out. Another thing that I bring to the table is a different insight. I'm not exactly the most technically savvy, but I do have a different perspective, and just like everyone else, they have different perspective, and I just bring another fresh pair of eyes to the table.
So now we're going to move on to the more, I guess, oddball side of the interview, and I'm gonna ask you two different questions. One's going to be a technical question, so something that I'm going to have you either draw on the board or talk through. And the second question is going to be a question that I have been thinking about for a very long time.
Okay.
So here's your technical question. So compare the pros and cons of C++ and Java. What do you like about each? What do you not like about each? And which one would you use more frequently?
Okay, so pros and cons of Java and C++. So they're both object-oriented languages.
Right.
So C++ and Java. We're going to talk about pros. It definitely depends on the application. And cons. So what I actually like about Java is that you have polymorphism and you also have polymorphism, inheritance. Well, that's pretty much true across the board with like object-oriented languages. But another fun thing about Java is there's reflection. So it gives you a bit more of a wider range. With C++, Java also has good. You don't have to worry too much about pointers. That's a big pro, because everything's a pointer. Pointers, you don't need them. Okay. And also with C++, that's actually the con is you have to be aware of how you structure your variables, because if you're not careful, you can reference your pointers in a function and have collision. You can overwrite your stuff. So pointers.
Right.
And then as far as and also pro is reflection. Reflection being that if you have a class and you have a class within that class, you can use, if you have abstraction, if it's abstract, then you can refer back to you can either use the function that's in the parent class or in the in the inner class of that class.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as C++, don't think that you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the cons about Java is you can't do address manipulation. Sometimes you want to actually get into a certain location in memory and be able to manipulate what the contents of that memory is. So there's no address manipulation. If I spelled that wrong. And pro, you can go into specific locations. I think that would be it for me. You can go to specific locations. For the pros, and the cons is the pointers and the variables can get easily mixed up. And as far as Java, the pros is everything's a pointer, so you don't have to. It's not as easy to get your variables mixed up. And also there's reflection, so you can create classes to do multiple functions within and of itself. And also the cons is there's not a lot of control that you would have in C++.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of so pointers in C, and I suppose more, I'm not sure as much as in terms of C++, but pointers in C are one of the main features of that language. So why do you think Java decided to make everything a pointer?
Well, it's more of a high level, Java is more on the high level end. So it's, with C, it's, if you need more access to memory, specific places, I think that would be one of the reasons why you would use C. But if you don't, like Java is more like if you need a generalized big picture kind of thing, you wouldn't need pointers. Everything's a pointer. There's less confusion. You don't have to worry about referencing, dereferencing, and all that stuff.
All right, good. Thank you. And last question. If you were a pizza delivery man, how would you benefit from scissors?
Pizza delivery man, how would I benefit from scissors?
Yes.
Okay, so scissors. Wow, let me think about that. Well, scissors are always something that you don't have on you when you most need it.
Mhm.
That's how I feel about it. But if you needed to, say, cut a receipt, or you needed to, maybe if you're a delivery man and you get into an accident, scissors would be good to have to cut through your belt, because what if you're stuck and you are driving, so you have a higher probability. If you're driving all the time, so you have a higher probability of getting into an accident. You're exposing yourself to that probability. And let's see, another use for scissors is to help your customer open up their packet of Parmesan or red pepper flakes. And let's see, what else would you benefit from? One of those annoying things about pizza is whenever they don't cut all the way through the pizza and you have the crusts that are still fused together. So you can use scissors to cut off that missed piece of crust. And I think that'd be it. There's a lot of applications. Hey, you have a nose hair dangling, maybe, be more appealing, keep yourself looking nice and tidy, loose string, there you go.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much for coming in today.
All right, thank you. It was wonderful meeting you.
Yeah, same.
I just want to start off by saying I appreciate you spending some time with us. I'd like to take the time to get to know you better.
Absolutely.
So tell me about yourself. How did you get interested into engineering?
Yeah, so I am a third-year electrical engineering student at UT Austin, and I do a lot of research. In terms of my academic life, I am very passionate about reading, writing, and thinking about sort of the big engineering challenges of the field today. And for me, those challenges reside primarily in nanotech. And for example, how do we fabricate better transistors? How do we fabricate better devices? And how do we turn Moore's Law on its head so that we continue innovating and improving on what we have today? And I think I got really interested in engineering actually because I had the luxury of having my E&M lab in high school completely to myself. And I definitely burned a few light bulbs. And I definitely had some mishaps, but I think those mishaps contributed to how I view engineering today as more of an exploratory, more discovery-oriented field, rather than just math and science and job stuff. So, yeah.
Okay, so it looks like you're really passionate about education.
Right.
And where did that passion for education come from?
That's a good question. So, I think I was very interested in education all throughout middle school and into high school. As a middle school student, my parents really pushed me to become very advanced in math. So, all throughout elementary school and up through like the middle of middle school, my parents would sort of not force me, but encourage me very strongly to go into higher level maths, to study math on my own, to read math books, if you will. I had a very dry childhood, but I think that sort of pushed me into a position where when I got into upper level math in high school, I was doing it at a very young age as a freshman. I took calculus as a freshman, and at that point, I felt like I had bottomed out, in terms of where I could have gone. So, I mean, there was no linear algebra or like matrices or like vector calculus at my high school. So I sort of turned that really forward-pushing calculus knowledge into going more horizontally. So how do I take what I've learned and sort of teach it to the people around me, since the way I had learned math was very, very different from the way that traditional high schools teach math. I had done as more of an exploratory discovery sort of thing, and whereas more high schools do it as a rote teaching, rote memorization course. And for me, that was almost jarring, and I really wanted to figure out, one, why, and two, clearly this is not effective. And three, how can I teach calculus in a way that is, one, more meaningful to the students, and two, actually engaging, so that they can actually learn the material. So that sort of got me started on sort of the teaching track, and then at the end of high school, I wrote a thesis and I published a book on calculus teaching as well. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So it looks like you have a great exposure to education, and here at our company, we're about to embark on a educational design project, and I'd like to know how you would approach this educational design project. It's going to be geared towards elementary school students, and you get to choose the topic in which you're going to expose elementary students to STEM topics. So you get to choose a topic, and you get to design the lesson plan.
So there's this prominent theory in education right now. It came about in the early 2000s. It's called the 5E plan for educational attainment. It was developed by the Biological Curriculum Sciences Study, I think, and it proposes a sort of a 5-step cyclical plan in terms of how you teach any kind of students. You start with an engagement, sort of an engaging task. So you sort of get the students engaged, then you have them explore and discover and go into this phase where they can do whatever they want, and they ideally record their responses and how they and what they observe about their experiments, and then they go into the elaboration where they go into explanation where they try to sort of explain what they saw based on what they know, and then after that you go into an elaboration phase where, as a teacher, you sort of come in and you say, well, this is, what do you all think? Is this something that makes sense? And you start questioning them, sort of trying to reconstruct knowledge, or to construct knowledge, if you will, taking what they know and extending it to different sorts of foundations and perspectives on a potentially different, unique topic. And the last step is the evaluation, where you start looking at the students, see if they've actually learned anything. And I think I would do this especially since these are elementary school students, I would do this through sort of an interactive activity, especially since students at that age are very much hands-on, and they aren't as sort of up in the head. So I would do something probably along the lines of like microcontroller robotics, giving them sort of a pre-made robot and having them play around with, what if I do this to the robot? What if I do that to the robot? And how do you think this robot functions? And sort of go down that questioning approach.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so in your academic career, tell me about a time where you had to work with a team, and any problems that you faced with the team, and also if you did have any problems, how did you resolve those problems?
Right. So I had to work in a team at this research internship that I had this summer, I guess. So I was invited, or rather accepted into a summer undergraduate research program at the University of Louisville, in Louisville, Kentucky. And for that project that I was working on, I was in a research group of about 5 people. 3 of them were professors, 2 of them were grad students, and then there was another undergraduate student with me working on something different, and then I was working on my own project. And so while I had my sort of own time to do my own thing, every week I would have to check in with the group to make sure that, what I'm doing is good, what my results are actually making sense, that kind of thing. So, and I would be able to get feedback on what I should do next and how I would approach the next week in terms of my to-do plan. And so in terms of teamwork, I think that fundamentally speaking, there's a lot of feedback that you always get from the other people on your team. So how to take that feedback and incorporate it into what you're doing is very important. And I think that experience in particular taught me that, yes, I do need to have time in my own space, but at the same time, it's so important, so valuable to have other people contribute onto what you are doing.
Thank you. That's great. So keeping in mind our education project, do you mind doing a small demonstration and a small explanation of what a band stop frequency response graph would look like?
Okay. So, show you on the board.
Yes, please.
So a band stop means that, so let's suppose that this is you're in the frequency domain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is your frequency, and then this is your amplitude in your frequency domain. So this is, let's say, a function x of omega, right? Mm-hmm. So a band stop frequency is when you have your signal and you want to put it through some sort of modulator to eliminate all the frequencies between negative omega naught and omega naught. So you want to leave the very low frequencies and you also want to eliminate these frequencies in the middle. Let me draw this differently. Omega x of omega. So you want to eliminate a certain range of frequencies. So you want very low frequencies and you want very high frequencies, right? So when you're going to eliminate your frequencies, what you're going to do is you're going to do your very low frequencies, your very high frequencies. So from here, greater than omega naught, less than omega naught, negative omega naught. And then you would also take your very low frequencies here. So your negative omega, L, we'll make this omega high. This is omega L. So when you convolve your signal with this function, what you do is that you take out all the frequencies between this frequency and this frequency. So all this frequency domain is removed, which leaves you with just all the low stuff and the high stuff.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you so much. I only have one more question for you. And it's a little strange, but
Sure.
I just wanted to ask one question, and that's going to be, what was the last thing you watched on TV, and why did you choose to watch it? TV or any video media?
Yeah. So I don't watch TV. I mean, it's something that a lot of people are into, and I just never got into it. The last thing.
Doesn't have to be TV. It could be video media, lasting on YouTube, Netflix, whatever.
Yeah. So I think the last time I watched something on TV was probably 2007 when the Avatar cartoons came out. those blew me away. Like those were amazing. Since then, I haven't. Oh yes, and also Phineas and Ferb. That was my childhood. But aside from that, I haven't really watched any TV. More recently, I've been really into like gaming stuff on YouTube because I'm too lazy to actually go and learn the games and like to spend 20 plus hours every week playing video games. But I can watch them. I can watch other people do it. So why not? Yeah, I feel like I get the same entertainment value as if I would, and much less frustration compared to me playing the actual games. So.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Hello, thank you for taking the time to interview with us here at Banana Incorporated. We would like to get to know you a little better. So please tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hi, so my name's Isabelle. I'm a third year electrical and computer engineering major here at the University of Texas at Austin. And my technical cores are software and academic enrichment for computer architecture and security. In my free time, I like to boulder and, run and stress relief. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me. I've also interned at HP for application security, so that was really fun as well. I do have a little bit of background in doing development for them because we did have a lot of automation tools. So yeah.
So how did you get interested in engineering?
Funny question. Well, it's not fun. I guess, good question. When I was a kid, my dad introduced me to video games really early on, and throughout all of my childhood, I kind of just questioned like how it worked. And so transitioning that to high school, whenever I would take like AP Comp Sci and just general computer science, that gave me kind of like an insight on how video games work. And so it transitioned to what I want to do, which is more, computer science, engineering.
Did you have any other interests in high school? Were you thinking, were you one of those very scattered people before coming into college, or were you very set on engineering?
I wasn't very set on engineering. I did have a passion for writing, but I figured if I could put more technical skills with writing, then, all the better.
Yeah.
It helps me become like a better communicator.
Mm-hmm. So in your writing, how do you use writing to communicate?
I guess that deals with whenever I have to email my manager or talk to my mentor through more, more writing, a technical analysis of what we're doing. Also, for my previous internship, I had to talk to development teams who were in Thailand. So instead of having to do like Skype calls or like have live conversations, most of our communication was through emails. So we could have all of the specific information and more to become more articulate with how we were, helping with the development team.
So it seems like through your writing you accomplish a fair amount of teamwork. So what were some of the difficulties in that process?
In communicating or the teamwork portion?
Both.
Okay. Since I work with a team of 6, everyone had a different background in security. So one of them came from a more electrical and computer engineering background, so he was more versed in lower level stuff like drivers, while other people were more into network monitoring or like web application skills. So during like our emailing and like our communicating as a team and having like stand-ups, there were a lot of times where it would be a struggle of figuring out what to do with a certain application because of the fact that everyone wanted to dissect the problem in different ways. Mm-hmm. So it was more about communicating the point of view and trying to figure out what is the best course of action for a specific problem.
Mm-hmm. So how did you navigate that as you realized that this was a problem?
Well, as an intern, I figured I should just learn as much as I can.
Mhm.
So for the most part, whenever an engineer or whenever one of my teammates would tell me like, hey, maybe we should do it this way, usually it's probably the best course of action because I came into the internship without knowing anything about security. So I just figured that the issues that I saw, I could just create as a learning opportunity, and it worked out for my favor.
Right. Good.
And tell me about a time when you worked with a team and faced difficulties and how you navigated around that difficulty.
Okay. I go to a couple of hackathons every year, and I usually go with the same group of people if it's local. So the situation was we were creating a Chrome extension to help with pronunciation accuracy. I definitely need that. So it was a team of 4, and we all had our own strengths. I got put into the front end portion where users could like see their data, but the difficulty with that was not only one, I didn't really know a lot about front end stuff. So on my portion, it was a slow progression throughout the weekend. But also 2, there wasn't enough work for everyone in the team. So what ended up happening was one of our teammates didn't feel like he was needed. And we got through that by giving him the task of creating our presentation for demoing. He was definitely one of the better presenters on our team. And so while everyone worked on the technical side, he more so like created this whole story of how to present our product, and it was a definitely a great experience, and at the end of it everyone felt like they contributed equally.
That's great.
So, just going back to something. So you were interested in software and academic enrichment, right?
Yes.
So what about, so what made you decide to do your academic enrichment in securities?
Well, I always thought that security was really interesting because you have problems that you wouldn't really see in software. Well, I mean, I guess it ties into software, right? But as a software developer, you're creating a product, you're creating something and developing something. It's kind of like your child. Whereas security is more of how to raise that child in a sense of, or in a way that it doesn't become influenced by wrong things in the future. I guess is a metaphor. Security does have like, although like software is huge too, like you have front end, full stack, back end, etc. Security has different problems and different there are different things that you can definitely like fall into the rabbit hole and just learning about. And I think that's really interesting because it's more preventative than it is reactive in a way, and you definitely need security in every software product or IoT device or anything in tech needs it, so that's why I picked it.
Transition into the less behavioral side of the interview, more technical side of the interview. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you a question, and I'm going to have you draw on the board.
Okay.
For this question,
Can I start while you're talking?
yeah, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, you don't know the question yet.
Well, to write notes.
Okay, sure.
Oh my God.
So here's your question. How would you make an AND gate from NOR gates?
From NOR gates?
Yes.
Multiple gates?
Yeah, you can have as many gates as you want. They just all have to be NORs.
Okay. Well, okay. So first, I guess we should do more tables like they taught us in school.
Okay.
And then NOR will be, we look at this gate and then go from just A, that would be saying A to itself, give me ignore. Is that true? If you only have A, you need to ignore. No, yeah, of course, that would be the negative of it itself. Then if we do B, the same thing,
Mhm.
and then that would be this part would be done. And then we got the actual and portion. That's so the actual and portion would look like one more gate, ignoring itself. We see.
Yes.
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 Yeah. Right.
Cool.
Right. And the last question for you. You've been given an elephant. You can't give it away or sell it. What would you do with the elephant?
All right. So I could do anything with the elephant.
Right.
Is it male or female?
You can make it whatever you want.
Is it a child or is it already an adult?
Adult elephant.
Adult elephant. Is this a scenario where I have a lot of space in my backyard?
You can
I
do
mean,
whatever you
okay.
want.
I mean, elephants are really smart, so I think I would keep it as a pet, but not. Honestly, I would want it to live its best life.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think a zoo would be a good fit, but probably ship it to one of the elephant sanctuaries in Africa, and then just sponsor it. So give it money or send them money to make sure my elephant is happy.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in. We really appreciate that you came in today, and we'll let you know in a few weeks.
All right, thank you.
You.